Insolvencies and the growth at all costs mindset. It's been a tough period for technology companies as there's been a shift from a growth at all costs mindset into a profit mindset. This has forced a number of insolvencies, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. Came across an article, and I'll just summarize it here to give you the point of the article. It caps a terrible year for food delivery services, which have been battered by rising food and petrol prices, investor skepticism, and high interest rates. Startups Quicko, Volley, and Send collapsed earlier this year, and established gig economy Deliveroo pulled out of the Australian market in November. Essentially what happened is we had a period of very low interest rates. What that meant is when there's low interest rates, it means that money is cheap and easy to come by. These companies were fed a whole bunch of money to try and grow at all costs. It didn't matter if they were turning a profit. What they wanted to do is when they get this money into market, capture market share, and get some return for their investors on their money. The thing is, the investors' alternative was to put that money into a bank and earn near zero interest. So what they wanted to do is put it into these companies and get them ahead of the curve. The problem is, and I'll show you in a second, interest rates have now climbed dramatically, therefore the cost of capital has gone up, and thus these companies have not been able to raise these money. Because these companies haven't been able to raise those funds, they then become insolvent. So what I want to do in this video is show what the shift has been from raising money and running at all costs, shifting to this profit mindset, why that's happened, and what the future looks like for SaaS companies. I've got a graph here from the target cash rate from the RBA, and it's showing what's happened for the interest rates over the last, say, 20 or 30 years. So what I want to focus on here is from 2015 onwards. So you can see here that we've had a decreasing interest rate since then through 2020. Now, particularly when the pandemic started, you can see the interest rates essentially crashed to zero. What this means is, as I mentioned before, cash was easy to come by. It was easy to source, and the options for investors to get return on their money wasn't very great. So they all turned to technology companies because they would promise a return on their money. So I came across this graph, and I want to show you what this means for actual valuations of these companies and what the money they were raising. So I've got a couple of graphs here. We've got EV versus revenue multiples. What we've got here is we've got the enterprise value of the company on the left and the revenue of the company it was raised at. So you can see here, essentially, this graph is almost inversely proportional to interest rates. What that means is as cash got cheaper, these companies became more expensive. And that obviously makes sense. If you can grab more cash and put it into these companies, obviously you're willing to put more in. If more people are willing to put more money in, then the valuations are higher. So you can see here, it's sort of peaking up around that 10 to 12 times EV revenue multiple mark. Again, on this chart, just confirms that there's growth multiples of the company that should also correlate to the interest rates. And you can see here, there's been a very sharp drop off on both of these graphs. And what's happened here is as the interest rates have increased and the cost of capital has increased, these multiples have decreased. What that meant is when these companies went back to market to try and raise more funds, their total value of their company had decreased. Now, generally speaking, almost no investor wants to put into a company that's going backwards. If you previously raised at a $100 million valuation and you come back to the market at a $50 million valuation, they're also going to go, well, how low is it going to go? Am I going to get my money back? Am I going to even make money from this? But what happens is if these companies come back to market and their valuation has dropped, they can't raise any cash, their runways end, and therefore they become insolvent. And that's what we were seeing. Kevin actually sums this up in a really good paragraph, which I'll read out here. Capital was free, now it's expensive. When capital was free, the best performing companies were capital consumptive. As capital has gotten more expensive, these have become the worst performing companies. This is a really good summary to show why these companies are now becoming insolvent. Previously, they could raise capital at almost any cost. It didn't matter. Capital was essentially free. It was 0% interest. It wasn't costing anyone anything. Now that the cost of capital has gone up 4, 5, 6 times, these companies come back and try and raise funds. And now when the calculations are run, it's not conducive for these investors to put money into these funds. Thus, these companies have had to pivot. And so what's happened is these companies had to pivot from this growth at all mindset approach and have had to work towards profitability. Profitability essentially gives you an infinite runway. Whereas when you're raising capital, your runway is only as long as the money you've raised against your burn rate until the next raise. So software companies now have this challenge. They've previously been growing at all costs. They've been spending a huge amount of money on development, adding features. They've been going to market and doing huge sales and marketing campaigns. They've been trying to capture market share. They're able to do this because they had huge capital reserves to go out to market and to get these clients onto their platform. Now they're going to have to reduce spending. They're going to have to slow that spending down in order to pull their burn rate below zero to enable them to have some profitability. What this means is that these companies will actually grow slower. There's going to be less demand in the market for software developers. And when you're raising money, it's going to be more important if your company is profitable or close to profitable rather than the growth metrics itself. And that comes back to the cost of capital. Investors are going to look at this and say, if your company is profitable, then I'm more likely to get money back and the company is more likely to grow. What can you do if you're a software development company? If you are a software development company and building a SaaS product, you would have gone through this roller coaster. You were probably born pre-pandemic and you probably were out there trying to compete with all these larger companies and spending money to gain clients. Through the pandemic, there's probably some uncertainty. You may have paused, but you saw that more and more cash was getting raised. We've come out the other side and now you've seen that cash is drying up and you need to survive. My recommendation here is to try and cut and be lean. Try and get back to an even or profitable business that you can. And that may mean cutting staff, cutting sales, cutting marketing spend, reducing feature sets, trying to bring your business back in line so it can become self-sustaining. We don't know how long this period could last. It could be 6 months, it could be 6 years. As they say in cricket, you can't score runs from the sideline, but therefore you got to make sure you're still on the pitch in 3 to 4 years when the market does tick up again. Here at Flying Donkey, we work with a number of SaaS products, and we've been in there helping them build features. We have seen a reduction in some of our existing clients' feature sets. We've also seen a number of new clients approach us, hoping for a bit more of a hybrid model where they've reduced some of their internal staffing capacity and augmented it with their own. Because we're able to be switched on and switched off, they can build a certain feature for a couple of months and then turn us off. And then they can turn us back on when they need another feature built. This becomes far more cost effective for them. And at the moment, cutting costs is one of the most important things you can do to make sure you're still on the pitch and can earn the business when the market ticks up again. This is something I recommend any software or software as a service founder watches, and I'm sure you're already aware of it, but I hope this illustrates why the game has changed and profitability is really the end goal you should be looking for.